50. So this is 20 years after Jesus' death. And then the Gospels were written even after that. For example, Mark was written in 60 or 70. Matthew was written around 80. John around 90. And no one really knows when Luke was written. So all of these books come much later. So how can there be a Christianity if you don't have the Gospels? So I think that something that's wrong is a lot of people say, when Jesus died, that's when Christianity started. But I don't think that's true. I don't know, do you have an opinion about this? Or?
So you think when started Christianity? The time?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. Maybe it depends on how you think, what you think Christianity is. There were people who were talking about Christianity starting in the 2nd century. They were writing very long books about what a Christian believes. But there was no institution until Constantine, really. And we talked about Constantine, didn't we?
Yeah.
Do you remember who Constantine was, the emperor?
Yes, emperor.
Yeah, before that, it wasn't really, there were lots of different people who said they were Christian, but they all had different beliefs. Like some of them thought that Jesus was not God.
Yes, because many people kill Christian, and the Christian should hide in some secret place and cannot tell people he's Christian. It will be dangerous. So I think maybe you say the emperor.
Constantine.
Constantine, yes, the emperor change the change the way completely.
Yeah, well that's true. That's another common story, is that Christians were persecuted by the Roman Empire, that they were killed. And it's true, they were killed. But a lot of people were killed by the Roman Empire. A lot of politically threatening people. And I don't think, it depends on who the emperor was at the time. But for the most part, people who called themselves Christian before Constantine, they really liked to tell stories about Christians being killed. Because if they told this story about the Christians being killed, then it made other Christians say, yes, we are Christians, we are strong Christians, we are against the Roman Empire. It was a way of building a community. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah. I know. Yeah. But because they do have a danger when they tell they admit there was a Christian. I think they still under the dangerous. I think so. 他说怎么讲？他们就是全部那个基督徒，他们都告诉人家说，基督徒就是会被杀，所以他们变成一个团体，在那个之前。You continue, okay?
Was it something?
Yes.
Was there something else you wanted to say about it? Or?
No, I think continue. I just don't know. I don't know how to express. Let me think about it.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's there's a lot to talk about. I was trying to find a map with Damascus on it, but I can't seem to actually. Let's see. Is this one? No. That's Asia Minor. Anyway, so we could talk maybe some other time.
Yes,
about Christianity and martyrdom and persecution, but I think maybe we could talk about Paul this time, because Paul was before all of that stuff. Paul was very early. Like I said, he was writing around 50, 60, so about 20 years after Jesus died. But before all of the Gospels. Did you know this, that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are all after Paul? Yeah.
Oh, after Paul?
Paul is, the letters of Paul are the oldest books in the New Testament.
But you said John, Luke, Mark, they are disciples, some of the disciples with Jesus. And I think 谁是医生啊？
Yeah.
And some rain appeared in the four gospel.
Yeah.
So I think this is older than Paul.
Yeah.
So they're older than Paul.
So sometimes you hear that. A lot of Christians say that. A lot of Christians don't. No historian thinks that the Gospels were written by the disciples.
No, a story was by disciple.
Yeah, historians.
Do you know?
Historical. Usually, it's through historical evidence. So the first reason is a lot of times when the Gospels are written, they're written in Greek, and the writer uses words and phrases and talks about things that people didn't know about when Jesus was living. So, for example, do you know about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in 70? So Jesus died around 30 CE, and then in the year 70 CE, the Judeans were revolting against the Roman Empire. They were fighting against the Roman Empire, and so the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, the major city, and they destroyed the temple, the holiest building for Judeans, the holiest building in the world, where Judeans thought God lived in this temple. And the temple has never been rebuilt. It was destroyed in 70. So in the Gospels, the writers know that the temple is destroyed.
So they write this scripture.
Yeah, well, what they do is they make Jesus predict. Jesus says the temple will be destroyed. And so what some Christians say is, well, yes, because Jesus knew, because he knows everything. Jesus could see 40 years later that the temple would be destroyed.
When we read this scripture, we don't care the temple was destroyed, was devastated by Roman people. We just know that Jesus died, that Jesus reprayed the God and reprayed the temple. So Jesus died 3 days, and after 3 days he will rebuild the temple. So I think I didn't know they predict the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by the.
Yeah, you're talking about. I think I know. Are you talking about the verse after Jesus is overturning the tables of the moneylenders, and he says that you can destroy my body, but it will be raised again. And yeah. Let me see if I can find that verse.
I don't know any description in the Bible tells us the temple will be devastated, will be destroyed after Jesus died. I don't see any description about it.
Yeah, let me find the exact verses for you because I don't know them off the top of my head. So for example, Stephen. Remember Stephen?
Stephen?
Who you went to church with Stephen? Oh yeah, you remember my friend Stephen?
Oh, Stephen.
Yeah.
I think you say someone.
Oh no. He knows verses very well. He has them memorized. I don't have verses memorized. I'm not. Let's see.
Hello. Just fill us for 10 minutes. Go. then you can
Oh.
do your own stuff.
Here, I'll find the good verses.
第马太27。Here. True and chalk of the temple.
Yeah, this is in reference to something he said before. I think in Matthew, that's Matthew?
Yes.
In Matthew 24, I'll find it.
I don't know any discussion about the temple that this story. It's true.
Oh yeah, so here we go. This is from Earth. So, as Jesus, okay, Matthew 24, verse 1. Do you have it?
24 plus 1?
Yeah.
24.
24, yeah.
This one. Plus 1. Leaving the temple. Jesus went out his way, and his disciples come forward to follow after him.
Right, to point out to him the buildings of the temple. Then he asked them, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I tell you, not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." And then in Mark 13:2, so do you have Mark as well? 13, starting at 1. It's very similar to Matthew. As he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another, all will be thrown down." And then in Luke 21:6, or 21:5 actually. Do you see? Yeah, Luke 21:5.
And the son was talking about the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and what is good. And for these things, you will see the town turning to another world, where not one stone will be left, another not in Toba.
Let me see.
As if we continue
Yeah, there's a.
sculpture, that did not mean the real building. That means something.
What?
I think we need one day the wall will have gone. Yes, Jesus will come again. He will destroy whole wall, not just the temple. And yes, like the Noah.
Yeah, well that's one way to understand it, but look at Luke 21:20. 21 verse 20. Yeah. When you see Jerusalem, I just want to see who's calling, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey Katie, can I call you back? When will you be around?
没有，他说这个圣经都是后面的人造假写的， 你是发生后来写，所以
Okay, well, I'm talking with this, the
就
family.
真的耶稣死以后就真的被美国
We're going to be talking for a
就
while.
把它摧毁到完全没有圣经，后来就没有
Yeah.
重建，他就说为什么那么
No, here.
后面
We'll talk
所以
later.
才会
No, here. My
这个
roommate.
预言是假的，然后他就说基督教
Oh, yeah, I'll have to do that. It's the same
是
house,
保罗
Katie.
创
It's
的，
the same house.
那他们就在保罗之后才慢慢形成，就是在经济讨论，但这个时间我跟他们不知道。You girlfriend?
No, it's my sister.
Oh, your sister. I'm sorry. We need to.
No, it's okay. I talk to her every day almost.
You're so close.
So, yeah, it's talking very specifically about Jerusalem, I think. You can interpret this allegorically, but it seems that the historical details are pretty specific. It does seem that the author knows about the destruction of Jerusalem. And you can also tell that the writing in Luke, Matthew, and Mark is all very similar, sometimes almost the same. The words are the same. Why is that? Well, most people think Mark is the oldest. Most historians think Mark is the oldest gospel. And then when Luke and Matthew were written, they both had Mark in front of them. In some parts of Mark they copied. In some parts they changed.
Just like today we get together and we write a diary about this thing and this night, and also write our story about tonight, and we show to each other. They were a little different, but they still mention something. And so I just feel they're just different people write their way about something. You see this, you see from the east to west. I see from the front to back. It's different way, different way. And even.
Yes, except the difference is.
But it's not difficult if you just hear your story and try to make up. I think there will be a little similar, and we can see the track. Just you want to, if something got wrong, you can see the track in this house. So, I think now so similar for test, how to say gospel or test.
Gospels, yeah.
Gospel, yes, for gospel. Something, if you want to know more, we have to see the other gospel. Maybe the one event they're talking about, we can find the same event in the streets. Not every gospel says the same street gospel, and you can know more about this event.
So do you think that when the gospel writers wrote their gospels, do you think they read the other gospels or not?
I think one is the author of the gospel is one is the disciples, one is a doctor. He lived the same time with Jesus, and one may be a disciple's student, maybe not the same time. And some people taught him, and maybe his teacher taught him another thing, or his friend taught him. His grandfather told him, and he wrote it. But it come from the four disciples come from four people, not the same people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, So let me show you what I mean exactly. Why I don't think the diary example really works. Because so say we all had dinner tonight, and then we came and we met, and then someone comes and says, okay, everyone, write down in your diary what happened. Okay, we would write down in the diary, and maybe it would be very close, right? What we all wrote down, maybe it would be very similar, but it probably wouldn't use the same exact words, because we wouldn't remember the exact words. Because we would remember what happened, but we wouldn't remember exactly the same
maybe they have a sense or because the thing is simple.
Well, it's not always. Sometimes it can
the
be.
most important in this story is very obvious. So they could use the same word and same phrase to describe it. Describe because they have something is very important. The teacher wants his disciple to know, so it's very obvious.
Let me show you. I have a very good book that puts all of the Gospels side by side. It's very interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these.
对不起，我是讲不讲，你来告我。
对，我觉得怎么都是你在讲。
你要不要帮我拍啊？你要帮我拍啊？
我没有。
你就拍啦。
再拍了，在那边了。
OK，
就全程拍下来就好了，要回去再去剪。所以你就不用录音啊，里面讲的我们可以自己去 review 啊。
可以看到我们。
有啊，都可以看得到。
看到那个 smile， 就把它放在一个对了。那你很聪明。你讲一些问题，他现在跟你说。
等一下，我停下，我停下来看一下。你们先。
你从那荧幕。
不是，我现在在看呢，他现在在用，我就先看。
关掉。
我没有要关掉，我只要先去看啊。
看什么？
看我们刚才看的到底有没有这样。
你就这个荧幕，如果大家都拍得进去就好了。
Gospel.
Parallels. You can look it up. Yeah, it means you put all of the Gospels side by side to show how. Yeah, it's parallel. Yeah.
Oh yeah, parallel.
So, for example, if we're interested in this verse we've been looking at, Mark 13:2. Let's see, Matthew 24:2. Let me find it. We can look at these different pericopes. Pericope is like a section of the. It's what we were just reading, and we can see them all side by side. Okay. So these are all of the verses we just saw.
Yeah.
As Jesus came out of the temple and was going away, his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. As he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." And then when some were speaking about the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God. So there is some variety here, yes. They are different. But you continue to read the story. Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? You see all these, do you not?" As for, well, this is shorter. It was beautiful. He said, so not one stone will be left here upon another, all will be thrown down. As for these things that you see, the day will come when not one stone will be left upon another, all will be thrown down. Truly I tell you, not one stone will be left here upon another, all will be thrown down. When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, opposite the temple, the disciples, Peter, James, John, and Andrew, came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will this be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Tell us, when will this be, and what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" They asked him, "Teacher, when will this be, and what will be the sign that this is about to take place?" So, there are definitely some differences, but there are also many similarities in exact wordings, and not just that the words are similar, but that they occur in the same order, I think.
I think the word must be very similar, like our country, your president, when he died, he said something. Everyone will read the same correctly, will write it correctly. Because the word before he died is very important. So if you in the room, you'll remember it's very clear. So the word just say, if someone say maybe it's very important and very changes and very impressed, everyone will remember it. But and it could be a little because the same events I think the most important is the word is so similar.
Mhm.
In the way the way they show, maybe I think not. Sometimes they will similar, but not every time.
Mhm.
But the word, I think most of the word will it's not constant.
Mhm.
It should be similar.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly something that's some Christians say that they agree, and that's what they argue. And it's hard. It's hard to argue against. It's hard to argue against that directly. I guess. If you believe that each writer, each disciple was writing the Word of God, and that God was using the writer, then you can always say that that's why the words are the same or almost the same, because, for example, you could say because these people tried really hard to memorize, or you could say because God was in control.
I don't think almost the same.
Yeah.
I think just part of them are same,
Mm-hmm.
not almost. If
Yeah.
almost same, I won't believe the Bible.
Well, I think you can still believe the Bible if they're the same. There are many Christians who agree with what I'm saying. For example, Stephen. He agrees with what I'm saying, and he's a Christian still, because the way he thinks of his Christianity is different. It's just he believes that Jesus is the Son of God.
It's not reasonable.
Mhm.
It must make sense.
Mhm.
Because the poor people write a story and look alike,
Mhm.
I think it's fake. But something happened tonight with the word you say and the way I do, when we describe in the same way, I think it's okay.
Mhm.
But if almost the same, and most of the story that in the gospel
Mhm.
is almost the same,
Mhm.
and the most of them are the same, over the half of the land is same,
Mhm.
then it's not easy for us to believe it's true.
Well, I don't know why. I don't really know why. I think it should be. It shouldn't defeat faith. I think to think that, for example, what most historians think is that when Luke wrote Luke, he had a copy of Mark in front of him, and he had other sources too. And it wasn't Luke the disciple. We don't even know who it was. Most historians say, who wrote the Gospels? We don't know. No one knows. This is what historians think. So when the author of Luke wrote his Gospel, he had the Gospel of Mark because that was older, and he took some of the pieces of the Gospel of Mark. He took some of pieces from other writings that we no longer have, and he combined them, and he also added things that he thought were true about Jesus' life and about the way the people around him should live, and he came up with a separate book, which looks like Mark in some ways, but in a lot of ways is very different because it was written by a different person in a different time for different people. But it isn't clear to me that just because, so even if you believe that, it doesn't mean that you don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God, or that you
but
don't.
the most
Yeah.
important, the
Yeah.
story must be true.
Mhm.
The disciple make up a story,
Mhm.
it's not true.
Well,
Just because the first one have the first, maybe create the story,
Mhm.
then the other one just follow the book he write.
Mhm.
So the point is our story just make up.
Well, it's difficult to say because, well, for example, if you have, this is what some Christian. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I hope he can say something.
Oh, yeah.
Because I keep talking.
But you speak so fast. So fast. The trailer even is not ending. You
No, it's okay.
Man,
It's okay.
you can make me in the
the room, no room.
Tonight.
Tonight,
Like a party sheet.
Okay.
Later.
tonight.
End of the meeting.
Okay.
Sorry, I interrupt.
No, it's
My
okay.
boss.
It's okay.
I think the forecast poll I just made. My role is only Mathai.
Matthew?
Matthew.
Matthew and John.
Uh-huh.
And John, both of them are the disciple of the Jesus. Yeah. So but the Matthew and the John is very the both of the disciples is very different. Yeah. The John says talk something maybe not in the may talk something maybe in the hope like he talk something like God.
Mhm.
But the Matthew is describe something, some event, yeah, during the Jesus on the world, yeah, and the Mark, I think the Mark is very similar to the Matthew,
Mhm.
and but I think maybe the Mark just copy something from the Matthew. And the Luke is maybe I think is younger, is younger than they. So they